My guest today is one of those players who can blow your mind with his approach to polyrhythms, unexpected grooves, and beautiful melodies. Born in Paris, but now residing in Montreal, Canada for a long time. You might know or not know him from his bands like Horrible People, Portraits, Bird Problems, Jukebox Ocean.
Oh my God.
If I'm not incorrect.
That's an old band.
Old school. Welcome to this episode, Joseph Anidjar. Did I pronounce that right, buddy?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. How are you doing, Joseph?
I'm doing good. It's been a bit of a wild few days for me, but now we're on the last day of the NAMM show, and tomorrow or Monday I get to take a day off. So we rally onwards.
Rock and roll lifestyle.
That's right.
Traveling.
Yeah, it's been. I was playing some shows before coming here. I was doing a little bit of a Canadian run with my band Portraits. We were opening for Sungazer, and we did. It was the biggest shows I've been done to date. So it was kind of like a whole operation. And so I did that, and then the next day, right after the last show, I flew here to do the NAMM show. So I'm kind of on a bit of a streak right now.
How's that for you to be doing those larger shows? Like you said, sold out show as well?
I think one or two of them sold out. They were definitely packed, like really big rooms. Like we played the Club Soda in Montreal, which is 1,000 cap room. And I think there was maybe like 750 people there. And then we did the Access Club in Toronto, which is again like 600 people. So it was cool. I'm not one to get sort of stressed out about performing because I perform quite a bit. But these ones were a little bit nerve-wracking because it was there's a lot writing on a lot of different elements, a lot of computer stuff, a lot of production stuff. But I'm lucky that the boys that I brought along with me like were doing the work, and everything was great. The audiences were great, and it was really cool playing those shows. I'm really thankful to have been given this opportunity.
So where do you feel where you're at in your career? Because you've been building for quite some time, right? Mm-hmm. Do you sometimes reflect like, okay, where am I now?
I think for the past couple years, I've been a little bit at a crossroads between either all my creative projects kind of working out like perfectly and me getting to tour like a lot and the audience kind of growing into a place where it sort of makes sense. And then maybe like having to sort of move and put myself in a situation where people are reaching out to me for gigs or sideman work. But most recently, like I think like it all sort of the long-term bet is all sort of paying off and whatnot. And these shows especially has been a bit big litmus test for us to see if we could like do it properly. Mm-hmm. So I think the next step for me is to just kind of write more music and sort of do it again while keeping all the other sides of what I do on the day-to-day kind of going.
Hey, let's look into the future a bit later on. Let's rewind. That's what sure. I tend to do in this series. While walking to this spot where we're sitting now, you mentioned you were born in Paris, France, yes. Right? And you moved to Canada when you were 3.
That's right.
Why did your parents move to Canada?
So both of my parents are in the medical sector. They're like doctors. And if I understand correctly, they were kind of having a hard time getting established and getting like the right sort of, lucrative enough sort of opportunities there. And then my dad got a teaching position at McGill University. And that's sort of because he's a surgeon. And so he just kind of up and moved. And then all of a sudden it was kind of great for them at least. So that's what happened because in Quebec, it's very French. Mm-hmm. So the Quebec immigration is really always looking forward for French-speaking professionals.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what they did. And then I just kind of grew up in Montreal. It's a great city. I really like it. Like going back to Paris, I definitely, it's a bit of a big metropolitan city, like very low rough around the edges. I don't really like it as much. As outside of Paris in France, there's a lot of lovely cities, but Paris is a little bit.
It's a huge city. It has its beautiful spots.
Absolutely, but then also it's a little stinky and people are mean to you. It's kind of it balances out.
Yeah. But that's where you're from, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And all my family's still there, so I stay in touch.
So 2 doctors as parents, mm-hmm. And they have a creative son. When did they find out their son was actually really creative?
I think my dad played guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when I was kind of picking it up, when I was 11 or 12, he was kind of interested and excited, but very quickly I kind of became obsessed and decided that I had to do, as soon as I realized that I could like study that after high school, it was the only thing I kind of wanted to do.
Mm.
There was some friction at some point in my teens where maybe like my mom was trying to convince me to do like a double diploma where I would do like music and science, or like music and like the other sort of non-science major, like sort of social sciences, they call it.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't interested.
So what made you? Because I was in the same situation. To be honest, I choose two studies.
Yeah.
And I didn't choose to focus on one. So what do you think made you said I was obsessed with the guitar? So what made you strong enough to tell your family as well? Like, no, this is where I'm going.
Well, I'm fairly stubborn.
Okay.
And I think like through high school, I could never work on something that I don't really want to do. But if I want to do it, I've always kind of worked like extra hard. So it just sort of made sense to me. And I think my ego was like large enough that I thought that I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, here we are. So it's worked out. But I definitely had a bit of inflated, like, oh no, like I am good at guitar. Like I have to see this through sort of thing. And it very soon after going to college, I realized that everybody that was doing the double diploma like wasn't really as dedicated or as good.
Mm-hmm.
There's because it's in music school, you kind of make it. You put in, you get what you put in.
Yeah.
Right. So if you are trying to balance all these music classes and then your science degree, you end up sacrificing, practice time or whatnot. And it's really easy to get by in music school, right? You learn the tunes, you show up, you play the right scales, whatever. But the real like killer players, they're in the practice room, like putting in like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, like a day, like practicing. And I definitely had my period of time where I was doing that. And I know for a fact that I could not have possibly done that if I was doing something that, number one, I didn't care about, and would be taking up that much time. If I started in the double diploma, I think I would have probably turned 18 and then like dropped out of that at some point, But I think I approached that discussion with my family like head on. Like when it was brought up like earlier, I was like, I just didn't want to do it. And there was no changing my mind. So but luckily it worked out though.
Being stubborn, I'm curious. Does that help you as a musician, or does it have its downsides as well?
So far, it's been helpful. I think often I have to check myself in my sort of confidence because I'm human like everybody, and I do make mistakes, and there's stuff that I have like kind of gone back on. But so far, the sort of stubbornness or determination or assertiveness, whatever word you want to call it, whether it's a good word or a bad word.
Determination is a better word than stubborn, right? But because stubborn, you already know where you're going, and as a musician, you need openness as well, I suppose.
Yeah,
right?
It's I don't know. Yes, it's been a good thing, and I think if you don't have that sort of determination, like you get a bit complacent. And I definitely think that even before that, I had sort of maybe more delusional than realistic sort of large ideas, and slowly they became more realistic and more sort of like concrete and sort of something that I knew how to get there in terms of goals.
So you were 11, 12 when you picked up the guitar. Yeah. What did the guitar mean to you then? It's because you have the notes and you're playing, but as far as your personality, because it does something to you, right?
I'm not quite sure. I think I might have been a bit of an awkward kid and lacked some confidence at some point in my early teens. I think because like it did come naturally to me a little bit. Like I did have I didn't, if I thought it was hard, I probably wouldn't have continued as well. Like there was a sort of a perfectly balanced feedback cycle where I was working enough and getting enough feedback back to continue working. So I think it just kind of felt good to be good at something.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as I developed my personality and as I grew up, I think I sort of separated who I am from just being the guitar guy.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely when I was much younger, that's what it was. That's all I wanted to play. And it was cool to me that I was able to play these things that I was learning better than other peers that might have been learning guitar at the same time.
Because I can imagine that gratification, can be important to a young kid, right?
Yeah,
For your
it definitely, it helped build my ego. And later on when I went to jazz school and started playing with people that were actually much better than me, then I got put that got put in check.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, there was a sort of encouraging, like, good feeling about sort of being good at this artistic thing that was also cool, right? Like guitar is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
That's why we do it. So there's something like that, something around that sort of feeling cool for the first time thing.
So, okay, you have the determined, obsessed, stubborn creative Joseph.
Exactly. That's right.
Decides, although his mother is saying maybe it's not a good idea, I'm going to go to jazz
Exactly.
university or
yeah, exactly. In Quebec, there's this thing called CEGEP, which is basically college, but it's after high school. It's university level classes, but that's where I did my jazz stuff.
So, what were you listening to back then?
When I was much younger, I kind of went to like the rock and roll thing, got into Guns N' Roses, got into different players that I thought were playing cool, interesting music. Then I think I went a little bit, I kind of took an interesting turn, and I went from sort of shred guitar based, and I got into really heavy music. I remember, I think when I was like 14 or 15, like I discovered like Slipknot, and I was just like hooked on that sort of energy. And soon after that, I got into the more like core sort of music, like the emo metalcore, like hardcore sort of thing. I was really obsessed with that sound, from like aesthetically, like the drum sounds, the guitar sounds, the screams, the compositions. That sort of kind of made me drift away from shred players. Like I was really into Mark Tremonti and Alter Bridge and stuff like that. So we're getting heavier, but there's still that sort of shred element. But then like when I started getting a little angsty, I was like really into Slipknot and Of Mice and Men and then after that I got into more progressive stuff, and we get back into progressive music and sort of shred stuff. I kind of took a turn.
How was it for a young guitar player who really is into that heavy sound to enter jazz university? Because I wouldn't describe jazz university as something where they teach you heavy sounds, right?
No. Well, so by the time I was going into jazz school, I had discovered instrumental players, right? I had checked out like the early Pliny stuff, or I had checked out, there's an album that came out in 2014 called Sea of Suns by Helix Nebula.
Oh yeah.
It's like pre-Pliny exploding, but it's that same squad of
the Jake House and Logan.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. The squad of Australians. And so that and many other things around the time kind of got me back into instrumental guitar, like vocabulary shredding with like cool chords. And then we have that heavy element, right? So that's where I am before jazz school. And I could play some of that stuff. I always had some chops of some kind. So what happened in jazz school is, because I could play, I had a little bit of an inflated ego that quickly got sort of shut down because I got my ass handed to me by like my like jazz teacher, because I thought I could just do things, but I didn't. I was not able to just do things.
Can you describe? Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Well, I knew some theory, but not in a sort of instantly accessible, like fluent way yet. So I had to work on that. And then I have one memory of my first semester one-on-one lesson. My teacher, Jacques Lebel, legend. He would do this thing where he would make you do like scales and arpeggios at the beginning of the lesson, kind of standard stuff. But what he would do is he would So whatever skill you're working on, there was like scale patterns, scale rhythms, and then like key centers and all these sorts of like different variables. And then he would randomize the variables, and you have to do it. And if you don't get it the first time, you kind of fail.
Mm-hmm.
So at the midterm, it's like, oh, we're going to do this, and this, try. And then if you don't get it right, you kind of, you fail that section.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of a random variable kind of game.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and because I was kind of too cool to practice my scales, I just couldn't do it. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess the only way to do this is to just randomize the stuff every day. So, so I did that for a few months, and then at the exam, I just flew through for that stuff. So I think I sort of understood for the first time the sort of that I have to be humble in my practice.
It's interesting. One of the other guests in this show, it's a Dutch player, Junior van Niel. And he told me like his talent got in his way, in a way, because things were easy. But on those moments to really reach another level, he did need a kick in the butt as well.
No, I agree with that. I think especially before jazz school, because I got into that heavy music stuff, and I was really satisfied because that music was kind of easy to play. Mm-hmm. So I was really satisfied with what I was making artistically. So I took, I kind of stagnated for a little bit. So, but I actually, okay, maybe this is an important detail. The first time I tried to get into jazz school, I didn't get in. So I had a bit of a semester where I was kind of like, what do I want to do in the first place? And I think I decided that I did want to be at that high level
Why didn't you get in? What do you think?
It was just a theory thing. Like on the theory entrance exam, I didn't quite make it.
How did you feel?
It kind of, it shattered my, ego a little bit. And it kind of like threw my plans around a little bit, because I had now all of a sudden, a week before starting this program, I had to be in a different program. So I did 6 months of like, soul searching or whatnot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was more like a few weeks, but anyways, because I had decided in that semester that I did want to be at that great level, I did want to read, I did want to know all the theory, I want to be able to improvise at a high level, all this sort of stuff. When I got humbled in jazz school later, it was like, okay, well, I have to kind of do the work. Mm-hmm. And then I did the work, and it was fine. And
it's interesting how a humbling experience can either help you or put you down, right? Because
yes,
you can think, okay, I'm going to go for it, or you're going to be like head down. I have to do something else.
Yes, I think I have those head down moments, but I think very quickly I go into problem solving mode, and I realize that like, no, like I just have to adjust and kind of keep going, because in my head, like being a mediocre guitarist like wasn't gonna cut it. And thankfully my ego was brought down enough that I didn't have some grandiose perception of like my art as being this thing that can be like ruined by like learning things properly or whatever. There's a bunch of guitarists that I kind of met throughout my experience in jazz school that like struggled with that, and then ended up dropping out, and then kept doing their own projects, and some of them are great musicians, but some of them aren't that great as well, and that's okay. It's not for everybody, but I knew that I wanted to be at that level.
You mentioned the word art.
Yeah.
Do you remember a period when you realized, okay, I'm now going from wanting to be a really good guitar player mm-hmm. to somebody who has something to say? Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it kind of ebbs and flows for me on the sort of artistic pursuit side, because obviously I do often think of myself as a technician like with the instrument, where I can sort of pick up things and perform them, and I know how to approach different problems. And if someone hires me for a gig as a hired gun, like I get the job done, Mm-hmm. But the art side of it has always kind of come with like collaboration a little bit. Like I've always been in like bands and stuff like that. I do like write stuff by myself, but I do feel that it's quite hard and difficult. Whereas like when I'm collaborating, it all kind of becomes more about the collaboration and the hanging out with your friends and making things together. And so that kind of clears up the sort of fog of like the artistic creation for me a little bit.
What do you tend to need? Is it like a drummer giving you a groove, or can you elaborate on that?
So, I think for me, creating something out of nothing is very, very difficult because I don't know what I'd like to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think some sort of inspiration either from someone else's idea or like I have an idea and someone else kind of riffs on it, kind of gets the ball rolling in a bit more of a natural way. Now, yes, if someone has a drum idea, I can probably write something over it. Or if I have an idea that I'm not sure about, maybe a drummer can like have a cool groove and then it kind of evolves from there. I used to also just like jam a lot with my friends. I still do quite a bit. I do a lot of jamming. Like in Montreal, there's a lot of a jam session culture. So that's been a big part of my upbringing as a musician, like the whole time. So you know, like with my band Bird Problems, like way back, like we would just kind of, you know, get high and hang and jam like for hours, and then you know we'd have like a 30-minute jam, and then we was like, oh, like there's some ideas in there we can kind of edit, trim down, and make it into like a 5-minute sort of song. And if you go way back, that's kind of how Tar was written, not in the sort of normal progressive way, but in the very much jamming out and sort of working out things way. But so that kind of clears up the recording process, the creative process, because you're just jamming. It kind of spontaneous creation sort of thing.
Basically talking with your buddies.
Exactly. So that's always kind of come really easy to me, which is why I've always liked the sort of jazz approach to composition, and I like improvising.
And also the back and forward element.
Exactly. And responding to your environment and listening, and someone might come up with some idea, and then you kind of all of a sudden you're in a different place, like musically. So that's how I did stuff in my when I was younger. But now, obviously, with the progressive thing, you end up writing with a computer a lot. You're more of a producing, and so that even though I think I'm pretty good at it, the spontaneous creation in the DAW, I have a little bit of trouble with.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So sometimes I have an idea, and then we produce it. Sometimes someone else has an idea. I'm good at producing other people's ideas, but when I'm by myself, there's a lot of doubt. So writing with Josh, writing with Bird Problems, it's sort of cleared that up with me because you know, you're smiling, you're having fun, something feels right, and you kind of follow that thread.
It's interesting that you say that, because a dog doesn't smile back.
No, exactly.
Right?
That's right.
I want to talk about Josh a little bit later on, but first I mentioned a whole bunch of bands right in the intro. One of them I mentioned Jukebox Ocean, and then you said, "Oh my God, that's a long time ago." What was that? One of your first bands? Or?
So Jukebox Ocean is no one's going to be able to find any music.
I tried. But.
Yeah, I know it's not. It wasn't good. So it's a good. It's all. I think. So I got to jazz school. Bird Problems was already a thing. I got to jazz school, and then me and my friend Shane Assouline, who's actually a staple of the Montreal jam session scene now. He hosts this big event called Grove MTL. It's a big deal in Montreal. Like everybody comes out, everybody's really good at their instrument, and it's a jam session. So him and I, we were in jazz school together, and I think we were just playing a lot. So we created this project. It was kind of like drums and guitar duo. And then we just played like bars all the time. We'd make like $35 and then get McDonald's after it when we were like 17. It was hilarious. And we recorded some stuff. And those EPs were kind of me learning to record and mix music, which is why it's not on the internet, because it's actually terrible. But so that's kind of what that is. And that sort of fizzled a little bit like into the future. It was, you know, after the duo, we kind of brought in a couple more people and we did some stuff. And then it just kind of fizzled. Bird Problems kind of took the forefront after a little while during that time. And then we were just doing different things. But I see him like once a week because I frequent that sort of session like quite often.
Yeah.
So it was sort of, that was my first kind of instrumental thing, let's say.
Yeah, because you gravitated towards because Bird Problems, of course, has vocals,
yes,
right? But you gravitated also towards instrumental.
Yeah, I just wanted to improvise more, I think. So that was my vessel. Now I have that a bit more established with Horrible People. That's kind of what that's become, and I really like what that is for that, because the players really challenge me, and it's very open. So it's very, very, it's very jazz. Jukebox Ocean was more of a jam band because we were trying to do jazz, but we were like young and couldn't quite do it. But so that's kind of filled my need for a bit more guitar moments.
And you mentioned Joshua de la Victoria.
Yeah. Yes.
How did you meet him?
So Joshua is a good friend of mine now, but I think we just kind of like connected on Instagram, and then in NAMM 2020 met for the first time. We were hanging out around the Bossy booth, just kind of hanging out a little bit, nothing like too intense. And after when COVID kind of hit, I think him and I, we were chatting, and I think we decided to just like hang out on Skype and just kind of talk guitar and hang out. And then after like, a lot of spent a time doing that like repeatedly, because obviously like, there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
We kind of decided to collaborate here and there on some Instagram stuff. And then we wrote Traveler, which came out in 2021. And then soon after that, I think we had decided that like we should try to write more music.
What did he mean to you? Because as an outsider, it feels like, hey, these two dudes are kind of kindred spirits, right? And they can push each other. But can you tell me what
absolutely
meeting him meant?
Yeah, well, in a way that I thought hadn't happened before, when I got to know Josh as a person and his playing, it did feel like we were in a similar spot, and it felt like he could hang with me on guitar. And often I feel that I can barely hang with him on guitar because he's an amazing player. But it felt like it was just like a really, really good match in terms of what we wanted to do and what we wanted to write, and how we played. Like it would be, there's, I think I said this to him like early on, that I feel that about 80 to 85% of what we can play overlaps. Like if he writes something, I can play it, and vice versa, except for like the tip top of like, or like very specific types of chops. And he's my age, and we were both living in our parents' place like at the same time during COVID, and I feel we had some similar goals, and I taught him some stuff, and he taught me a ton of stuff. He got me on to like the tuplety like metric modulation stuff, like he kind of, because he was playing with Matt Garska a lot, so he kind of funneled down a lot of those ideas to me during those many Skype sessions. And I just thought he was a genuine good guy, and it was just fun hanging out with him. So it just made sense that at some point we would start writing music, and writing music online on a Skype call is probably the least forgiving way to write music. So the fact that we got one song out of that is amazing. Because I have not, Traveler is the only thing I've been able to write like remotely with anyone, because it's very, very challenging to do that. So that was a really, really good litmus test to then go and meet up in real life and write by High.
But I can imagine it must feel good if you say, okay, we have 85%, and there's 15% of what we can't do, but that's where it's interesting also, right? Absolutely. You push each other.
Absolutely. I often feel pushed by Josh's playing. He gives me a run for my money. He's truly an amazing player. He's got crazy feel. Like, guitarists like often have like a little bit shaky time and whatnot, but Josh is a rock. And I'd like to think I can hang, but often like we're jamming and he's just like spinning, running circles around me. Like he's very, very good.
And this has become portraits, and which is one of the important things you're doing right now, right? As far as because it's relatively still early in your career, of course, right? Like, can you tell me something about the way you're developing as a guitarist? Okay, you meet Josh. Okay, you think, okay, this is another thing. Let's dive into this. But are any new things coming up in your life, and how in your playing, and how often? I have to maybe cut that because that didn't came out
that's okay.
quite clear, but maybe I should rephrase it. Can you tell me something about in what way your guitar playing is still developing?
Well, I think obviously I've sort of reached a certain level, but the things that kind of I feel that I still need to work on are always around being a more solid musician. I don't think that I need more chops. I think that I need more fluidity. I think that I need more instant access to my ideas. I think I need like better time, not have to rely on anybody else in the band to kind of give me the timing. Cause it's, being in a prog band, like obviously you write really difficult music, but when you're performing it, like there's a lot of stuff kind of holding your hands, right? The show is kind of more or less the same every night. You got to click in your ears, like it's kind of happening. But I think the things that I lack, will come with sort of humbleness and time, rather than like an obsession with playing like a little bit faster or whatever. And I think like as the art kind of takes a bit more of a focus in my musicianship, I will have to simultaneously kind of treat the maintenance of my playing with the attention it deserves. And that's something I've been struggling with for a couple of years. Like it's very hard for me to kind of operate at this level and maintain like a consistent practice regimen. It's like a little bit like working out, right? Like when you get really busy, it's like, do you prioritize the thing that you're busy about, or you prioritize like your health or whatever, and it comes and goes, and it's okay to be consistently inconsistent. But that's something that I feel that as I get older and as more things become more put together in my day to day, I will sort of have to figure out.
To me, it's interesting because a lot of guitar players tell me about finding their voice, right? And in a way, your voice, so to say, is music that was quite complex and needs a lot of attention. And like you say, it's like working out. So if your voice is something you need to maintain, that's an interesting process, I can imagine, right? It's not something you can instantly go to if you don't.
I don't know that.
Put time in
that. I don't know that my personality or my voice on the instrument is something that I need to maintain. I think that might come from a different thing. I think I've always had like a really strong like, aesthetic taste, in the sense that I know what I like and what I don't like, and I can like be sort of precise and pinpoint like when something excites me or if something is not quite hitting the way I want it. And that has been the thing that I think people are picking up on consistently and sort of recognizing. However, I must admit, I don't think I've put too much thought into finding my voice. I think it's sort of worked itself out because I just do things that I like the sound of all the time. Even if I'm like just playing a solo on someone else's music, I think the way that what I gravitate towards to ends up sounding authentic, because I have such a weird vocabulary from different places.
Maybe your voice can only come that way, right? If you're going to say, okay, now I'm going to put intention in finding my voice, it might not work, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've had that sort of discussion with a friend recently, actually, where they were kind of, I'm getting better and I'm early on my journey, but I really want to be recognizable and individual and in my approach, and I want my art to sort of be like authentic to me. And I'm, kind of was responding by saying like, I think like maybe you need to spend more time on the fundamentals and more time kind of like learning other people's work, and through that, and kind of maybe doing things that you don't like and things that you don't like, you will kind of refine what it is specifically that you want to do. And once you find out what you want to do in a less abstract way, not just a feeling way, that thing will become kind of your voice, right? Like it's like, I don't know like how to describe my own guitar playing. Like, am I a fusion guy, or do I write gents, or do I like play progressive music? Like, I like improvising, but I can't like swing at all. It's so I'm kind of in this weird niche because I've just decided to do what I want, but also in some extent I've been humble about like putting in the work and like transcribing and learning different things. I don't know. It's the uniqueness of whatever I'm doing has sort of worked itself out, but also anything that I play, I could probably point to where I got it from. So I think it's the mix of what I'm doing that is individual rather than every single thing. Right?
Of course, I think that's also logical, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You draw from life, and life is also what you hear. There's Slipknot in there, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. It's how far we've come.
Yeah. Hey, the future. I said in the beginning, let's talk about that as well. What are your plans?
So I just got done with these shows with portraits, the next step for that project is I have some music to finish. Josh was finishing a master's for a couple of years, so it was a bit hard to kind of get together and do that stuff. So now he's done. So we're going to lock in and make moves on that.
Okay.
And then I think I would like to tour more. That's all I really want to do. I just want to play in front of audiences that care, like at a higher and higher level. So I think these shows and the fact that we're going to have music kind of like in the back pocket will kind of give us the leverage to continue to do it. And I've been thankful to like meet a lot of people in the scene, and I'm sure that once they see that we're ready, like they'll kind of I'll be blessed with a generous offer. So that's that. I'm working on some stuff for the summer for touring with portraits right now. It's a bit abstract, but hopefully soon it'll be kind of put together. Other than that, with Horrible People, which is my jazz sort of trio, we're going to go back into the studio in March and kind of do a few more songs live off the floor and kind of put those out because those have been sitting in the back burner for a while as well. And Bird Problems has some stuff coming too. It happens a little bit slower with that project because the band it's not all full-time musicians. And I've been in this project for a very long time. So, kind of life goes a certain way, but that will continue for the foreseeable future as well. But generally, I just want to keep doing cool things. And,
have you convinced your mother yet that it was right decision?
That was sorted. I think as soon as she saw that I was working really hard, it was all sorted out. That was kind of like a struggle, like before I turned 18. Now everybody's down, and I think my mom likes a little bit that I have some Instagram following. She kind of gets a little bit of joy out of it, so we're good. We're all good. But yeah, generally, I just want to keep doing cool shit and get the boys paid. Hopefully, me paid as well.
Yeah, listeners, check Joseph Anidjar out with either Horrible People or portraits, or Bird Problems, or your own stuff. You release
there's some stuff, but I think I don't think I'll be doing more solo stuff for the foreseeable future. I think it's not the right time for that.
I'm gonna definitely check everything out, dude. Thanks so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure,
for
man.
The conversation, and listeners, also thanks for listening.